They called me the maid, right there, at the Christmas dinner table. My own family, the people I grew up with, shared childhood memories with, broke bread with year after year, they looked right through me and laughed. And when the waiter came and placed the wine by my side, he smiled and said, "Welcome, lady of the house." The silence that followed, deafening. But let me take you back. Because moments like these don't just happen out of nowhere. They're born from years, no, decades of quiet humiliation, of being made small, of swallowing pride until it burned. My name is Anna, I'm 38 now. And what happened that night was not just revenge. It was the unveiling of a truth many people tried to bury growing up. I was always the one in the background. My sister Mariana was the golden child, the light of my mother's eyes, the beauty everyone talked about, the one who would go far. I was smart, quiet, maybe too observant for their liking. I noticed things. I noticed how my achievements were often overlooked, how when I got into university on scholarship, no one clapped. But when Mariana got a modeling contract at 17 for a campaign that barely made it to print, they threw her a party. I was used to being invisible, or so I thought, until I met Lucas. Lucas saw me. Truly he was kind, thoughtful, the kind of man who looked at me like I was art. We met at a small bookstore cafe where I worked part-time during grad school. He asked about the book I was reading, Dostoevsky, and instead of pretending to know it, he admitted he'd never touched a Russian novel. That honesty, it disarmed me. We dated for 4 years before marrying. Small ceremony, just close friends. My family wasn't thrilled. He's not exactly upper class. My mother said once, "Bookstore boy." Mariana mocked. "You always go for the deep, tragic types." But I didn't care. We were happy, or so I believed. We built our lives slowly. No inheritance, no shortcuts, just work. Long days, patient saving. Eventually, we bought an old house in the countryside, a crumbling beauty with history in its bones. We poured everything into it. I designed every detail, from the carved banisters to the warm kitchen tiles. Lucas helped lay the floors. We joked that one day, when it was ready, we'd host the perfect Christmas dinner, one where we were the hosts, not the guests. Sitting in silent judgment, that day finally came. I sent out invitations to my family the first time in years. My father had passed, and perhaps a part of me hoped this dinner could stitch something back together. Naive, maybe, but it's Christmas, right? Miracles and all that. They arrived dressed like royalty. My mother with her fur coat in Brazil in December. Mariana in a designer dress, holding a wine bottle like it was a gift from Versailles. Her new husband, some wealthy investor who spoke 3 words the whole night, followed behind. They walked through my home like tourists, like it wasn't mine. No compliments. No, this is beautiful. No, you've done well. Just glances, tight smiles, whispered comments. At one point, I heard Mariana murmur to my mother, "Is this place rented? Or does she actually live here?" I swallowed it, smiled, kept pouring wine. Then, dinner. Long table, candles, dishes. I had prepared myself. Every flavor a piece of me. I was in the kitchen when I heard my name, or rather, the absence of it. "She's really playing the part," Mariana giggled. "Setting the table, serving the food, my God, she looks like the maid." And they laughed. My mother, my cousins, even the man who married me once and said I was unforgettable. And then the waiter arrived. A professional I'd hired from a nearby hotel to help with serving. Dressed in crisp white, he placed the wine by my chair and said, without hesitation, "Welcome, lady of the house." I looked up. Right then, the whole room paused. Because something shifted, not in the air, in me. They had laughed, sure. They had ignored me, judged me, excluded me all my life. But now, I owned the ground beneath their feet. Literally, this house. In my name. The wine they were drinking. From my vineyard. The catering company. One I had invested in quietly. But I didn't say any of that. I just smiled. "I hope the meal is to your taste," I said calmly, and returned to my seat at the head of the table. But that smile, it was the beginning of everything. Because what they didn't know was this. That night was never just about dinner. It was a setup, and they had walked right into it. I had spent years building my silence, years learning how to listen without reacting, observe without interrupting. That night, every ounce of that discipline paid off. Because the moment the waiter called me lady of the house, I saw it in their eyes, confusion first, then discomfort. They were trying to understand how the version of me in their heads didn't match the one sitting before them. But still, they clung to their image of me. The maid, the outcast, the forgettable sister. Fine, let them. As we ate, the room buzzed with false civility. My mother made sharp little comments disguised as compliments. Everything is very ambitious, Aina. So many flavors, so many spices. You've clearly been watching those cooking shows. My cousin Carla leaned over her plate and whispered, "Did you really make all this yourself, or did the hotel staff help?" I looked her straight in the eye. "Every dish is mine. Every plate you touch has a piece of my hand in it." She blinked, unsure if it was pride or threat. Maybe it was both. And Mariana. She played her role flawlessly, smiling at my husband, tossing her hair, whispering little jokes meant to land, just loud enough for me to hear. She had always played games with attention, even as a child. If I wore a new dress, she wore heels. If I won a writing contest, she won a beauty pageant. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Lucas wasn't here anymore. He had left me a year ago, quietly without a word of goodbye. One night, I came home to an empty closet, a scratched-out note on the fridge that read, "I'm sorry, I can't be who you need." The irony. I didn't cry, I just stood there, staring at those words, not because I didn't feel anything, but because I had already suspected. The late nights, the cold shoulder, the sudden business trips, and yes, the lipstick on his collar that wasn't mine. I found out later who she was. And that was the real twist. It was Mariana, my sister. They had been seeing each other for nearly a year before he left me. My husband and my sister, the two people I had loved with the most innocent parts of myself, I never confronted them, never gave them the satisfaction of a dramatic scene. No, I waited. I watched them post pictures, pretending they had just found each other, acting like it was fate, like I was the chapter they had both outgrown. My mother applauded their love, calling it a second chance, a new beginning. I was erased. And yet, I never disappeared. I just changed shape. In the year after Lucas left, I buried myself in work. I had already started a small real estate business with a friend. We expanded, bought properties, flipped houses, invested in a vineyard, a boutique hotel. My name wasn't on all the papers. I made sure of that. I wanted to grow in silence. Quiet power, the kind they wouldn't notice until it was too late. And now here they were, sitting in my house, drinking my wine, eating my food, still thinking they were the important ones in the room. Mariana tapped her glass, stood. "I just want to say, this is impressive, ain't I really? You've come a long way. We're all proud of you." She smiled with that carefully constructed innocence, the one she used on magazine covers and rich men. "I mean, who would have thought?" she added with a soft laugh. "Our little Anna hosting a dinner like this. I guess anything's possible these days." The table laughed. Even my mother nodded, like it was some kind of generous compliment. And then she said it. "I mean, the waiter even called you the lady of the house. Can you imagine?" Her laughter echoed, but something in her voice cracked. Just slightly. She was nervous. That title, Lady of the House, had unsettled her more than she wanted to show. So I stood. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for the room to quiet. I picked up my wine glass, let the silence settle. And then, calmly, "I didn't think I'd ever have you all here. Not after everything. But I'm glad you came, because tonight isn't just dinner." They stared. "This house, this vineyard, the wine you're drinking, the company that catered the meal, the art on the walls, they're all mine." No one moved. "I bought this property a year ago, renovated it, designed it, built every part of it, with no help from any of you." Mariana's face tightened. My mother's fork paused in midair. "I've spent a long time being invisible in this family. Forgotten, mocked, betrayed." I met Mariana's eyes, and yet here we are. She opened her mouth to speak, but I wasn't done. "This isn't a toast," I said. "This is a reckoning." A reckoning? That word hung in the air like a thunderclap. No one moved. No one laughed anymore. Mariana's smile had vanished. My mother looked at me like I had just spoken a foreign language. I walked slowly around the table, trailing my fingers lightly. Along the wood Lucas and I had sanded and polished with our bare hands. I paused behind Mariana. "Do you remember the dress you wore the day he left me?" I asked her, my voice calm. "The green one with the low back. The one you claimed was just for a work event." She froze. "I remember, because I found the receipt in his pocket, gift-wrapped from you." The room had turned to stone. My cousin Carla choked on her wine, My mother's hand trembled ever so slightly. You weren't subtle, neither of you. But I suppose you didn't have to be. You'd already decided I didn't count. I leaned closer, whispering just loud enough. He cried when I told him I knew, not because he was sorry, but because I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just said, go. I looked up again, facing them all. And then I built this. Let that sink in. To everyone watching this, have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever sat in a room full of people who pretended you didn't matter, only to come back stronger, smarter, unstoppable? If you have, drop A in the comments. Let them know you're still standing. Now, back to the story. Mariana finally found her voice. You're being dramatic, Anna. You're twisting things. We never meant to hurt you. That line, that perfect little lie. We didn't mean to hurt you. They always say that, don't they, when the knife is already in your back. Lucas and I, it just happened, she stammered. And we didn't tell you because we didn't want to make things worse. I tilted my head. You mean worse than him leaving without a word? Or are you lying to me for over a year? She looked down. For once, she had no answer. And then I did something that caught them all off guard. I laughed. Softly at first, then louder. It wasn't bitterness, it was freedom. Because I had spent so long carrying their weight, their judgment, their betrayal. And I realized right there that none of it held power over me anymore. You know what the saddest part is? I asked, my voice quieter now. I invited you all here not to punish you, but because some part of me still wanted to forgive you. Some small, broken piece still hoped you'd see me. I looked at my mother, but you never did. She didn't speak, she just stared. Not at me, but through me, like always. I turned to the table, gently placing my hand on the polished surface. This house was meant to be our fresh start, mine and Lucas's. But when he left, I made it mine alone. Every wall here is a reminder that I survived. And then I walked toward the fireplace. I have one last thing to show you, I said. I picked up a leather-bound photo album and set it on the table. Slowly, I opened it, page by page. I showed them the renovations, the paperwork, the deeds, the vineyard photos, the smiling faces of the people I hired, the women I mentored, the team I built from scratch. This, I said, is what I built while you laughed behind my back. While you whispered that I was boring, or plain, or invisible. I pointed to a final photo, a plaque above the front door. Casa and I had it mounted 2 weeks ago, just in time for tonight. My voice softened again. And just so you know, Lucas isn't part of this story anymore. I sold the house we bought together, burned every picture. The only thing I kept from that chapter is this table. I paused because tonight it holds the truth. They sat frozen. No arguments now. No false smiles. Just shame. And I let them sit with it because sometimes the greatest revenge is simply showing them who you became without them. And if you're still watching this, ask yourself, who would you be without the people who held you down? Without the ones who told you you couldn't? Leave a comment below and tell me, what's your Casa Enna? What have you built from your pain? I want to hear your story, because I know you have one. I didn't expect them to apologize. That's the thing about people like them. They rewrite the story in their heads before the truth can settle in. They make themselves victims of your strength, not perpetrators of your pain. But this time, I didn't need an apology, because I finally understood. Their approval was never the prize. Freedom was our turn to leave the dining room. But Mariana's voice, tight, defensive, broke the silence. So, what? You just brought us here to humiliate us? To show off? I turned back to her. No, I said, I brought you here to bury it, all of it. The version of me you kept trapped. The girl you ignored, the wife you betrayed, the daughter you dismissed, she's gone. I walked to the mirror near the hallway. Looked at myself, truly looked. Not with doubt. Not with self-questioning, but with recognition. This version of me, I said quietly, she built a life no one can take away. And then I faced the room once more. You came here expecting the same ANA, the quiet one, the soft one. But soft doesn't mean weak, and quiet doesn't mean blind. I paused, my hand resting lightly on the back of the chair I had once. Sat in the seat no one had noticed was always furthest from the family center. I've reclaimed every space you pushed me out of. You ever feel that? Like you've been playing small your entire life, shrinking just to fit into someone else's story. If you do, I want you to hear me. You don't owe them your silence. If this story is speaking to you, if you've ever felt invisible, and then risen type 1, see me in the comments. I want to know you're out there because you're not alone. Back at the table, my mother finally spoke. Her voice was almost childlike. I never meant to make you feel lesser, but the truth was, she did. Every time she praised Mariana for existing while questioning everything I ever did. Every time she laughed at my dreams, called me too sensitive, said you'll understand when you're older. But I was already older. Older than all of them in the ways that mattered. I didn't respond to her. Some words come too late. And I wasn't here for healing, I was here for closure. So I turned to Mariana. You can keep the man, I said. He was never mine if he could lie like that, if he could sleep next to me and still kiss you. Her face fell. For once, she had nothing clever to say. Her confidence, the things she wore like perfume, had cracked. I continued. I hope you love him. I truly do. Because you're going to need to. What's that supposed to mean? She asked, voice sharp again, defensive. It means, I said, walking to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough for the moonlight to flood the room. I'm done living in shadows. And once you've stepped into your own light, there's no going back. They didn't understand. Not really. They never would. But I wasn't talking to them anymore. I was talking to myself. To the girl I used to be. To the women watching this video right now who've been betrayed by the ones who were supposed to protect them. To those who rebuilt, brick by brick, in silence, waiting for the moment they could finally say, this is mine, my life, my story, my power. And if you're still here, that means this story has reached a part of you that still burns. Maybe quietly, maybe like wildfire. Don't let it fade. Drop your story in the comments. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe. There are more stories like this. Stories of justice, of rising, of reclaiming. Because the world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs the ones who rose anyway. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels full, heavy with realization. That's what wrapped the room now. No one reached for their wine. No one lifted their forks. They just stared. Not at me, but at the version of me they hadn't anticipated. I sat down, slowly, deliberately. Not because I was tired, but because I had nothing more to prove. But I wasn't finished yet. I told you earlier, this wasn't just a dinner. I said, it's also a goodbye. They flinched, a word that felt too final for people who always assumed they'd be forgiven eventually. You're leaving? Mariana asked, the first note of panic in her voice. I smiled faintly. No, you are. Confusion crossed their faces, but I didn't flinch. This was never your house. It never will be, and after tonight you'll never be invited again. My mother narrowed her eyes. You're severing ties over old wounds. No, I replied calmly. I'm cutting away rot. There's a kind of power in saying that out loud, in choosing yourself so boldly that the world has no choice but to sit back and watch. You could see it in their expressions, that realization that they were losing access, not to a place, but to a version of me they had always depended on to stay small. This house, I said, will never again host people who laugh at my pain. I looked at Mariana. I watched you steal from me and wear it like it belonged to you. And still, I waited for the guilt. It never came. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. No more pretending, no more rewrites. You didn't fall in love. You took what was mine and expected applause. My voice was steady. That was what made it worse for them. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply declared the truth and let it burn on its own. And then I stood again. There's one more thing, I said, and this was the moment, the twist, they didn't see coming. I turned to the cabinet behind me and took out a stack of envelopes. Each was thick, sealed, addressed by hand. I thought for a long time about what justice would look like. I said, holding them up. Would it be revenge? Exposure? Humiliation? Mariana watched me, unsure now, her confidence drained, her posture stiff. But then I realized it's much quieter than that. I handed the envelopes out one by one. My mother, Mariana, my cousins, each took theirs in silence. What is this? My mother asked. Your inheritance, I said. Her eyes snapped up. What? This house was bought from money earned through the business I built after Lucas left. And a portion of those funds came from selling the property you all assumed I couldn't handle. I looked at Mariana, the house he and I shared. The one I let go of. Once I realized I had outgrown every corner of it, I turned back to the others. I made investments. Good ones, grew the business. Sold the vineyard for triple what I paid. And then I created a legal trust. They stared. I could have kept it all. Every cent. But instead, I split a portion across those who didn't try to tear me down. That's when they understood the envelopes. Empty, symbolic. Except for one. Only Carla, my cousin who never mocked me, who once mailed me a letter after Lucas left and said, "You don't deserve what they did to you. Got a check." Not a massive one, but enough to feel like a door had opened. Everyone else, just a note inside. A single sentence written in my hand. "You gave me nothing, I returned the favor." Mariana crumpled hers in fury. My mother looked like someone had slapped her, but I stood tall. Because vengeance doesn't always need fire. Sometimes it walks in dressed as grace and leaves with your illusion. If you're watching this and you've ever been made to feel small, remember, you don't have to scream to be powerful. Sometimes silence is the most terrifying answer you can give. Tell me in the comments, what would your silence say if it finally spoke? Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded they are not weak, they are waiting. And subscribe, because there are more stories like this. Real, raw, and rooted in truth. After the envelopes were opened, no one spoke. The silence wasn't thick with tension anymore, it was hollow. A kind of silence that comes when something has ended. And everyone knows it, but no one wants to say it out loud. My mother folded her hands, as if in prayer. Maybe trying to salvage dignity. Maybe just holding on to what little control she had left. Mariana stood up. "Is this what you needed?" she asked. "To humiliate me. To prove you're better." I didn't even look at her. "No." I said, "I never needed to prove anything. I just needed to stop pretending." She scoffed and turned to leave, but not before I added, "Oh, and Mariana." She paused. "Lucas, he called me last month." That stopped her cold. "What?" I nodded. "Wanted to meet. Said he made a mistake. Said he missed me." I watched her expression twist, pain, panic, rage, all tangled together. "But I didn't go," I said, with a smile that didn't reach my eyes, because I already knew the truth. He didn't miss me. He missed who I used to be, the woman who would have forgiven him. I stepped forward, calm, unshaken, and she's gone. Mariana left without another word. My mother followed, soon after, muttering something about regret and family falling apart. But I didn't stop her, because nothing was falling apart. It was finally coming together. That night, I sat alone in the dining room. The table was empty. The candles had burned low. The air smelled of rosemary, red wine, and closure. I thought I'd feel sad, that maybe there'd be a hollow ache where my family had once sat, but I didn't. I felt ... light, because I had finally told my story out loud. Not to beg, not to blame, but to own it. And now it's yours too. If you're still watching, this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about becoming. Comment below, who are you becoming now that you've let go of who they told you to be? Have you ever reached a point where the silence was louder than the apology you never got? Share this video with someone who's still carrying what they should have burned long ago. And if you're new here, subscribe, because this isn't the only story. It's just the beginning. Final shot, I blew out the last candle. Whispered to the silence, "I'm not the maid. I'm the one who owns the house."